guys, welcome back to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of digital and creative media works, where each week we take something from pop culture and try to break it down to better understand it. My name is David.
Hello, my name is Ben.
Fuck, immediately whiffed it.
I choked on my own saliva, like right as you started the intro, and I didn't want to cough.
Like a 3-year-old child.
That was so
held
quick.
it.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Fucking
Hello,
hell.
everyone. My name is Adam.
Yeah, we got Adam back on against our best judgment, I suppose.
Yeah, I know.
Don't know what I was thinking. Yeah,
It's like he always thinks it's a good idea, and then it's like immediately I get on, and then immediately you can just tell. It's like David's
I'm like, this
shaking
was-
right now with rage.
This was a mistake.
This was a mistake.
Yeah.
But the reason I've actually got Adam on is that we were talking about this film and he'd never seen it, so I was like, cool.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's fucking
I'd never
wild.
This is crazy.
seen it, dude.
So it's like cinema canon.
Yeah.
So I was like, definitely we gotta
This is
watch
one of
this.
those films.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it last night, and I could say that was because I wanted it to be like fresh in my memory, but it wasn't. I just forgot about it.
That sounds like classic
I watched it at like
Arthritis.
1
to be
a.m.
honest.
last night.
That sounds like something we would do too.
Yeah.
I love that. But look,
Very on brand.
obviously you've read the episode title, but to wrap up kind of Tension Month, we thought what better way than to pick something that kind of uses its storytelling and tension in the weirdest way possible, maybe. And hopefully we can kind of learn a little something about maybe some capitalism and kind of what the fuck is going on in this film from it. Because this week,
Good old classic capitalism.
some classic capitalism, because this week we are talking about the tension of American Psycho. American Psycho is a 2000 satirical psychological horror film, co-written and directed by Mary Harron, based on Bret Easton Ellis's 1991 novel of the same name. I was aware of the book before the film. I hadn't read the book, watched the film, read the book, then have seen the film multiple times since. Let's do a quick roundtable before we get into the summary. What did you guys think? Let's start with you, Ben.
Yeah, I saw the film a while ago in like, I don't know, probably like grade 11 or 10 or something. It's one of those films that you
What
watch
is
when
that
you're
in-
young.
What is that in like UK?
I would have been
I don't know.
16. So
Oh, okay.
do
okay,
that
right.
do that translation
Do that
for you.
maths, yeah.
And yeah, when I watched it the first time, I barely understood it. I watch it now and I'm like, okay, I can see why a lot of people misunderstand this film.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most misunderstood films of all time.
Oh,
next to,
I'm
like,
sorry.
next
I'm
to
really
like
sorry.
Could we do one fucking episode where you turn off your cell phone? Holy shit, Adam.
Okay.
Goodness gracious.
I'm
I promise.
I'm just gonna
Keep going.
I'm just gonna
Jesus
run
Christ.
that sentence again.
Fucking professionalism.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I can see why it's one of like the most misunderstood films with like Fight Club.
It's up there with Fight Club.
Yeah.
For sure.
I've never watched
and-
that either.
Oh, what the fuck, Adam? Have you watched anything? Do you watch films?
You haven't
Not
seen
really.
Fight Club?
I'm not a big.
This
movie
whole analysis doesn't work if you
Holy
haven't seen Fight
shit.
Club.
You haven't seen
Really?
Fight Club?
guy. No, I haven't seen Fight Club.
What the fuck?
What
It's
is
like
it about?
The film.
It's just like a guy. And it's like a guy, and he fights. And
Hey,
the
Pat,
one thing I've
you've
seen
seen
from
Fight
Fight
Club,
Club
right?
is there's like an apartment.
Pat's
scene.
seen Fight Club. He's your age. What are you doing, Adam?
Just because
think
he's the same
we're
age
gonna-
as me doesn't mean that like we're gonna be like right on the same fucking cultural
I think we're
line.
gonna have to get Adam back after he's watched Fight Club.
Yeah, I guess.
because
Like, is
that's
that
a pretty
Alright,
important
give me
film.
like an
really
hour and a half,
crucial-
okay? Give me
It's a crucial
No, we're doing this episode.
Yeah, we're doing this.
You're
one.
gonna
We'll get you back later.
sit. Look, it'll be interesting. It'll be someone who's seen American Horror,
Hasn't seen-
American Psycho,
Hasn't seen Fight Club.
but hasn't seen Fight Club.
What's
That's
gonna be-
like a unicorn. We have a unicorn, everyone.
And then we can. Oh, do we have the luxury of then doing an episode of someone that's seen American Psycho but not Fight Club,
Right,
and then
cool.
do Fight
All right,
Club?
so don't worry, Adam.
Holy
you're,
crap.
You're off the hook.
Sorry, I'm just floored by that. What were you saying, Ben? Shit. Dude.
It's a good film and I like it.
Yeah, well, coming back to it now, like as an adult, did you kind of start to get a lot of those themes a bit more?
Yeah, I understood it more. I mean, there's still bits of it where it's just like, what?
There's some stuff that isn't executed as well as it could have been.
But yeah, I guess I understood it more.
Yeah.
I don't know, just my cynicism in general.
Yeah.
I'm just such a lefty.
Yeah.
It just makes a lot
It
more
very
sense.
much makes a lot more sense when you kind of get
Yeah.
through that lens. Adam, knowing apparently that you've seen no cinema, what did you think of this going into it?
I've seen. I just want to clarify. I've seen at least two movies.
We
That
know
I-
for sure
that I-
Infinity War and
This is
Endgame.
Infinity War.
Yeah, I've
Definitely.
seen those two. But no, I'm not a big movies person. So movies always feel really weird to me. It was neat.
was neat.
Fuck off, man.
Mary
It was
Harron
neat.
just died. She was like, it was neat.
It was neat. I really enjoyed the murder scenes. They were very unnerving. I liked the way
Okay.
it was like constantly cutting between the fucking like him fantasizing about killing a person, and then it was like I'm walking on sunshine. That shit was fucking hilarious. The whole movie
Yeah.
was filled with bits like that. I found
very
it very
cool.
funny.
I thought you might enjoy the music, the music
yeah.
focus of it, because there's very much a focus with Bateman's character on music.
Yeah.
I love the
weird.
way that you could tell when he was gonna kill or not, depending on how much he talked about the music.
Yes. Very good. Yeah, I love it. Obviously, like, coming back to it this time, we've been doing this podcast for quite a while, so when I watch stuff now, it's very much like I have a different lens that I put on things.
Right.
And I was watching it this time, and like it was just neurons every second. I was like coming up with ideas, and I was like, "Oh, this film's so interesting and so deep." And I got to the end, and I went, "It's not. It doesn't quite get there. Like it has a lot that it's just trying to do, and in my kind of estimation, at least, it almost nails the themes it's trying to convey and the complexities it's trying to convey. But I think there's some execution from a narrative perspective, not necessarily a filmmaking perspective, that I think doesn't work as well as the book, or just doesn't work as well in general as it could have, contrasted with something like Dexter or something like Fight Club, for instance, that has a similar unreliable narration.
Right.
And I guess just for some transparency before we get into the summary, I read pretty heavily two texts for this one, which was unreliable narration in Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho and Jeff Lindsay's Darkly Dreaming Dexter, which is a paper by Robin Lundberg, and Greta Olson's Reconsidering Unreliability, Fallible and Untrustworthy Narrators. So those are the two texts I'm going to cite probably the most as we go through this.
I actually also read two texts for this. Yeah, I read the first one was cool, but probably an hour away from starting, so no rush. And the second one was just getting set up now. I was at 8:26. So
Actually,
there's
Adam
two.
can just do the funnies from now on.
Yeah, just the.
If you do the funnies, we'll do... Because that gives you
You
a
can
break,
do the
'cause Ben's normally
insightful
the
and
funnies.
meaningful analysis, and I'll do the bad
Oh
jokes.
fuck. No. How about I'll run the show.
Oh,
That
okay.
always works well.
And I'll just go
Okay,
home.
hell yeah,
okay.
it's BCM works time, boys!
Oh no, you guys! It's yeah. It's gonna be a week where I'm too sick to do this, and it's just gonna be you guys doing that. And I'm gonna
fucking
hate
really.
myself for
Fucking,
it.
I
it's
need
gonna
to
be so
fucking
good.
make logos and shit for BCM works the 1 week
send
that
you-
it does happen.
I'll send you the canned assets for the logos we have, and you can
Yes.
noodle around.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, it's
Do it in
summary time. Here
crayon?
we go. All right, strap in. Okay, I've kind of tried to trim it down, but there's a lot going on. So, in 1988, wealthy New York, investment banker Patrick Bateman's life revolves around dining at trendy restaurants while keeping up appearances for his fiancée Evelyn and his circle of wealthy and shallow associates. We see Bateman's obsessive beauty routine, workout regime, and focus on aesthetics. When Bateman discovers his colleague Paul has nicer business cards than he does, they're very thick, Bateman kills a homeless man and his dog in a rage. Later, Bateman lures Alan back to his apartment, and after delivering a monologue about Huey Lewis in the news, kills Alan. Bateman then sleeps with two prostitutes and leaves bloodied. The next day, Bateman's colleague, Louis Carruthers, reveals his new business card. Bateman tries to kill Louis in the restroom of an expensive restaurant and attempts to strangle him. Louis mistakes the attempted murder for a sexual advance and declares his love for Bateman, who flees in disgust. Bateman later invites Christie and his acquaintance Elizabeth to Alan's apartment for sex, and kills Elizabeth during the act. Christie runs, discovering multiple female corpses in various rooms as she searches for an exit. A naked Bateman chases her while wielding a chainsaw and drops it on her as she flees down a staircase, killing her. Bateman breaks off his engagement with Evelyn. That night, as he uses an ATM, he finds a stray kitten. The ATM displays the text, "Feed me a stray cat." As he prepares to shoot the cat, a woman sees and tries to stop him. He shoots her instead and lets the cat go. A police chase ensues, but Bateman escapes. He flees to an office he believes is his and calls his lawyer, frantically leaving a lengthy confession on the answering machine for all the murders he's committed. The following morning, Bateman visits Alan's apartment, expecting it to be full of decomposing bodies and in the middle of a police investigation, but it's vacant, freshly painted, and for sale. The realtor tricks Bateman into revealing that he is not there for the sale and cryptically tells him that it isn't Paul Allen's apartment before ordering him to leave. As Bateman goes to meet with his colleagues and lawyer for lunch, horrified Jean finds detailed drawings of murder, mutilation, and rape in Bateman's office journal. Bateman then sees his lawyer at a restaurant and mentions the phone message he left the prior evening. The lawyer somehow mistakes Bateman for another colleague and laughs off the phone message as a joke. Bateman desperately explains who he is and again confesses the murder, but the lawyer says that's impossible as he had dinner with Alan in London a few days earlier. A confused and exhausted Bateman returns to his friends, where they briefly muse on whether Ronald Reagan is a harmless old man or a hidden psychopath before discussing their dinner reservations yet again. In a final voiceover narration, Bateman realizes he will continue to escape the punishment he deserves and that there has been no catharsis. Quote, "This confession has meant nothing." Credits.
It was all inside his head. Wow.
He didn't kill anyone. It was metaphors.
It was all imaginary. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. So the obvious question the film raises is about unreliable narration. I guess for me, it's easier to do that in a book, obviously, because it's easier
to do it in a book.
Because you can kind of like, when you watch something on screen and then they go, actually, that's not what happened. You kind of go, I saw it.
Yeah.
Whereas in a book, it's much easier to kind of allude to things that didn't happen.
Yeah.
For instance, Edgar Allan Poe, the king of this unreliable narrator technique, entails like the Telltale Heart and the Cask of Amontillado. Greta Olson, who was writing about this exact thing, I've got a quote from her that I'm going to kind of read you guys, and I want to get your take on this in contrast to American Psycho, because I think one of the issues the film faces is, how do you do that unreliable narration? And Fight Club's a great example. I'm kind of glad you brought that up. Where like that works because you have no visuals of the bits that are being concealed. So the alternate life of Tyler Durden when he's not with our narrator,
don't spoil the movie
we don't
for
see
me.
that. Because we don't see that, right?
It's been 20 years, Adam.
It's well beyond. Also, the book's been out longer than that.
Yeah.
Because we don't see those elements of the narrator's life that are Tyler Durden acting in that role. Where like when it's recontextualized, we're not questioning scenes we've seen. It fills in the blanks for us.
Right.
This is different because if you get to the end of the film and you go, oh, well, he didn't kill anyone, you still saw him do all that stuff. So it's making you question and recontextualize scenes you actually watched.
Right.
Which is kind of different, whereas Fight Club only has like 4 or 5 of those where the two characters are together and have interactions with people that are separate.
Yeah, but I feel like the whole thing was deliberately from... it wasn't like an outside looking in view. Otherwise, it would have been done from the perspective and shot from the perspective of another person that was in his own head. So it makes sense that if he is not, in fact, doing all these murders, that he would be seeing them, because he's like, I don't know, got like... What is that called? Is schizophrenia hallucinations?
So he's an unreliable narrator in this piece. So he's delivering to us the events we're watching, but there's an unreliability to them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I'll tap into in a second. So this is Greta Olson in one of the papers that I referenced earlier. She says, quote, this is regarding Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. So she says, quote, "The speaker of the Telltale Heart begins his tale with a number of inconsistencies. Poe's narrator insists that his addressee has accused him of madness, always a sure sign of mental stability." And this is a quote from the story. "True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but why would you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them." End quote. To make sense of this narration, the reader will be quick to attribute mental instability and untrustworthiness to its source. The narrator will be diagnosed with pathological untrustworthiness, and the reader will choose the therapeutic strategy of reading against the grain. End quote. So what Greta's tapping into there is that the minute that you're watching a story or listening to a story, like with Bateman, if he goes, "You might think I'm crazy, but I promise I'm not." Like the minute someone says that, you go, "Well, dude, that's exactly what a crazy person would say." Exactly. And obviously it's far easier to deceive and obscure in prose. Whereas I think with American Psycho, Harron somewhat struggles to capture that like obscurity because Bateman's fantasies, quote unquote fantasies, are so fucking vivid and so improvised. Like dropping the chainsaw on Christie from the top of the staircase is such a, it's funny, right? But it's so vivid and specific that feels like that can't be part of a fantasy. Do you know what I mean? Like there's this level of improvisation to them.
My reading of this film is in such a way where there's no unreliability in the narration.
Okay, what do you mean?
So my sort of
So you mean that he completely believes it?
Not that he completely believes it, just that everything he does absolutely happens, but the world in which these things are happening isn't the world that we live in now. It's, for me, this film is a case of, it's not that the narrator is unreliable, it's that the world that the narrator is in is inconsistent and flawed and kind of like a mutation of the world that you expect.
I mean, is it very different to the one we live in? If that, because so there's two readings then. So if that's your reading, and well, let's get into that in 2 seconds. But what you're saying is there's two ways you can take it. Either he lives in our world and his narration is unreliable, or
he lives in a different world
and we don't have access to that understanding.
Yeah.
So, okay, let me hit you with this aspect then, right? So let's pretend that for a second that the murders didn't happen, right? He didn't kill anybody.
Sure.
If we're to believe then he didn't kill anyone, this is all just a fantasy. The guilt he feels is equivalent to if he had killed those people, right? Because the guilt for him is so, like, overwhelming, right? Like, Adam, as someone that's never watched this before, like, if for Patrick Bateman that guilt is equivalent to me,
I wouldn't characterize it as guilt.
Or shame, I guess. Like,
no, I wouldn't characterize it as shame
not over the
either.
nose.
He's not. Well, at least I didn't see anything that came across as shameful. I think he was ashamed of the fact that he had murdered the amount of people, or he had supposedly murdered the amount of people that he did, but he still didn't feel lasting satisfaction, because that's what he wants to get from killing. He wants to get that sort of sadistic satisfaction, but he's not getting it for more than, the duration of the kill and, the 2 minutes afterwards when he continues listening to his song. He's not shameful about the fact that he killed those people and those were people. He's shameful about the fact that he's still not feeling better about it.
But he's also shameful that he's not been caught. Like, there's an element to it, like, he feels like justice hasn't been done because he hasn't been caught. And I guess, like, for me at least, the shame aspect comes into that kind of capitalism vein of that. And again, we're still pretending that he didn't kill anyone. We'll get to the alternate reading in a minute. Like, for me, the guilt stems from this, like, inbuilt shame in him where, like, he's not as good as Owens. He's not as handsome and fit as he could be. He doesn't have the best business cards. Like, to me, at least, Bateman is, like, the perfect creation of capitalism, right? He is so hobbled by comparing himself to others that any imagined success that he has to, like, self-sabotage, right? Like, he's like, everyone wants to fuck me, like, I'm so attractive, like, I have the best job, I'm, like, fucking crushing it. But that's never enough, because there's always someone better. Oh, he's got better business cards. Oh, his fiance's hotter. Like, there is, he even self-sabotages. He's like, I have to have these fantasies where I kill people to make myself feel accountable for the horrible shit I do on Wall Street. Like, he's just the perfect baked-in, like, result of capitalism to me, at least. But I think if that was the case, then the film shouldn't, like, the ending doesn't make sense. Like, for me, that reading doesn't quite land, because the ending, he gets away with it. And if the film is trying to say, well, that's just a product of capitalism, which is this, we kind of end up with these semiotic fantasies of, like, killing and raping and murder and shit, and that plays out through, I guess now, like, this was 2000, but now that's through social media and porn and these kind of other avenues of the non-real, right? Are we then to believe that this film is going, and that's just what happens? Because it doesn't feel right to me either. Like, it doesn't feel right to me the film's going, yeah, he's fucked up, but that's just the world we live in, man. Because that doesn't quite sit with how absurd he is. Yeah. Like, if he was a bit more adjusted in his regular life, because he's not, right? He's sitting in the business, like, in the boardroom, like, sweating his balls off, being like, this dude's got these thick ass business cards, dog. Like, he's fucking losing his mind. And he's got this journal in his desk that's, like, full of, like, this rape fantasy and stuff.
Right.
If we're to believe, like, the film's trying to say, like, yeah, capitalism's bad and it's just a product, then that stuff wouldn't be real either. And he would be fine in his regular life. He'd just be a regular Joe, and then he'd come home and, like, be masturbating while imagining dropping a chainsaw on a chick.
Right.
So I don't know. That doesn't quite sit right with me either. But on the same token, the reading that you had, Ben, which was that, he did kill those people.
Well, yeah. So I still think that there is an element of, the idea of this being, like, a film about capitalism. Like, it's unavoidable. Like, just the nature of, like, he's always wanting the good reservations. Like,
he's an investment banker.
Yeah, he works in Wall Street.
That's, like, a made-up job.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a thing. That's not a thing.
Right. It's just so, like, quintessential, just like, this is about capitalism. To me, sort of what I sort of, like, the main takeaway I got from this film was just, like, there's all those times where he's so like overtly open about the fact that he does all these horrible things, and he'll like explicitly tell people, it's like, I kill people because I enjoy it, and they just seem to like ignore it or like don't listen. And even at the very end, when he's like called up his lawyer and he's talking to his lawyer at the, like face to face, and he's just like, I killed all these people, I killed Alan whatever his name is. And his lawyer's just for me, the giveaway is the look on the lawyer's face. And like, I don't know whether this is intentional, but like, this is what I got from it. But he looks like when Patrick Bateman is talking to him, he's just like, yeah, I know, shut the fuck up, go away. I don't want to get involved in this.
Right.
Really?
For me,
I just saw confusion. I just saw confusion and a little bit of sort of, could you shut the fuck up and let me get back to my
I'm kind of with Adam on that, only because he mistakes Bateman for someone else. Do you know what I mean?
For me, so this is like, this gets dumb and metaphysical.
Yes,
But my
please.
take is that Patrick Bateman is not a person. He is just the embodiment of capitalism from the author's perspective. So this idea that whatever he does is a representation of what this sort of capitalist machine does to people. So, you know, he like spouts all of this, you know, like, we gotta feed the hunger, we gotta save the poor, stuff like that, and then he goes outside and shanks a homeless guy. It's just like that two-face where it's just like he talks one things but then his actions say another.
Plus he's an investment banker,
as well, because there's like a real sort of disparity between the scenes where he's in the Wall Street or like in the business setting or like with one of his many sexual partners, and when he's like killing. Because like when he's doing the Wall Street stuff, everything sounds very rehearsed, and the way it's cut, everyone delivers their line, response, delivery, response, delivery, response. Everyone knows what's happening in the conversation before it's happened.
like it's almost rehearsed. Yeah, it's like
it's almost as if
yeah.
they're actors in a movie. Whoa.
Well, and I think even what's his name? Green Goblin's character, the sort of, I guess he's a private investigator.
Willem Dafoe's character.
Character. He's like, you know, you spend the whole movie like, oh, is he on his tail? Like, is he going to catch him? But if anything, this private investigator, he gives Patrick Bateman an alibi kind of in the same way that, so for me, this sort of sequence of events where he's trying to figure out, like, where were you when, what's it, Paul Allen. It's like, where were you when Paul Allen died? And he's just like, he's like fumbling and umming and ahhing, and he's getting his words mixed up, and he's just like, oh, we'll have lunch, we'll come back, and then like make sure you got your stuff in order. Make sure you have your things in order so that I don't have to arrest you. And you know, when he comes back and they have lunch together, and he's just like, apparently Paul Allen was at a meeting with this person, and Patrick Bateman's just like, yeah, totally, like Marcus, I think, which is what he mistakes. He gets mistaked for Marcus, and he's just like, oh yeah, okay. So it's like, oh, did you talk to Marcus? It's just like, yeah, but he has an alibi. And then Patrick Bateman's just like, oh no,
Bateman is Marcus, right?
No, they're just two guys. There is a Marcus.
They just get confused.
He just looks like him, because he wears the same suit. That's like the reason.
That's right. Yeah,
and he gets the same haircut. He has the same barber.
Yeah.
But
he's
so that wild '90s. That wild 90s cut, I love.
But then, like, you know, he keeps grilling him. It's just like, all right, so, you know, it's not Marcus because he has a solid alibi. It's just like, where were you? And then he just, like, gives him an alibi. He's just like, oh, these people say that they were with you. And Patrick is just like, yep, that's the one. I was with them, and I must have.
So, in that reading, then, what you're saying is, like, because he's part of that system, the system self-insulates him from consequence.
Because for me, it's a case of just like, he's the embodiment of this system. So the private investigator who also exists within the system he's not going to actively attack. He's still going to do his job. He's still going to, like, you know, part of capitalism.
He's like an antibody, but he's not going to...
Yeah. Capitalism is about like winners and losers. Like, it's part of the system. You have to, people make money and people don't make money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of thing where it's just like, yeah, he's an antagonist, but he still helps Patrick Bateman. And even at the
Yeah.
very end, the lawyer like does the same thing, where it's just like, I was with Paul Allen having dinner in Paris. You know, what you like the thing you made up to as like an alibi for where Paul Allen is
I'm gonna
when you killed him.
corroborate.
So it's like, I'm gonna agree with that.
Interesting.
I'm gonna like follow that on because like I don't want to
Man,
lose this.
We had such a different reading of this. Because in my mind at least, whether or not he's lying or telling the truth doesn't change. So I think in other stories, like Fight Club is a great example. The narrator in that story, when you find out that Tyler Durden is his ultimate persona,
do not spoil it. Do not. Do not.
It's really hard
I
not
am
to
going
talk
to
about.
watch it now.
when
do not spoil
when you
that.
when you find out that twist, right?
Right.
It doesn't change the way the narrator behaves because it's a different personality, right? So my argument here would be that regardless if Bateman's reports are true, so if his narration is correct, as you're suggesting it might be, he's an insane psychopath, right? If they're false, he's a delusional psychopath. There is very little tension between his reality and his projection of reality, right? I think the alternative to Bateman butchering a girl is him metaphorically butchering her with his dominance, right? He's like fucking these prostitutes rather than like actually butchering her. And I guess like, so one thing the book does better, and this is what I wanted to contrast it with, not to be the book is better guy, but I just think this might be interesting for you at least.
Sure.
So in the book, and I'm quoting from Lundberg, quote, that none of Patrick's victims is reported to be found throughout the whole novel, in combination with his fascination for brutal movies and serial killers, suggests that Patrick's descriptions of all the hideous crimes he has committed are just fantasies. These fantasies are inspired by books, movies, and real-life serial killers, rather than actual events from his life. Patrick seems to confuse reality with fantasy, which suggests that he is misreporting the situations and therefore provides the reader with an unreliable narration of the events. End quote. However, if what you're saying is true, which is he's this product of capitalism, that's kind of baked in. Like that mythology, that kind of twisting of facts to kind of, you know, oh, well, yeah, you know, I had dinner with Paul Allen. Like the system facilitates that shit.
Yeah.
So I think that actually fits into your reading.
Yeah, and I think the key is that I don't think Patrick Bateman is the one in control. I think he's, like he says in the film, he's just an entity. Like there is no Patrick Bateman.
Mm-hmm.
He's just this sort of, he's like the center of, I don't know. He's the center, but he doesn't particularly exist. People just sort of
He's just a convergence
interact
of
with
events.
him.
Yeah.
And like he does actively do things. He is an active participant in the film, but except for his secretary, which is just like
Jane, yeah.
the weirdest part of this film, everyone he really interacts with on a sort of like a close level ends up dead. So you mentioned in the summary where he goes to strangle what's his name, and then he like takes it as like a
sexual advance,
as a sexual advance. In the end of the film, when he's like confessing all his murders, he confesses that he killed that guy,
Which he didn't. Did he?
well, he doesn't. That guy doesn't appear for the rest of the film. He's not. He's gone.
No.
Like
Because
Yeah.
the last scene with
you see him, it seems just like, oh, I'll call you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like it's a murder you don't see in the same way that you don't see Bateman beat up.
He doesn't kill the prostitutes either on screen.
No,
Yeah.
he beats them up the first time. You see like you only see some killings. Like when he's sort of talking about, he's sort of going in chronological order of what he's of like who he's killed. It's just like we saw that one, and then he'll list off 3 we didn't see, and then he's like saw another one. Like there's a lot of just like stuff that they don't show.
I would have preferred it if, because you know the way there was the inconsistency between what he was saying happened and what supposedly really happened. I would have preferred if that sort of seed of inconsistency was planted a lot earlier in the film, because you don't really start to notice the inconsistencies till like the last little while. I would have preferred that was more of like a present theme, if that was the whole, he's just fucking mental and he's not actually killing people. Haha.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's no solid evidence that what he's done doesn't happen. Like there's,
Yeah, well,
if we're talking about a film,
I-
there's nothing visual that
No.
you see that like you don't see Paul Allen.
Yeah,
You,
I think that's
but everything's
yeah.
cleaned up, but it's all been clearly painted over.
That's why the film, in my mind at least, like it's trying to do something different than the book, because the book is like he's out of his mind.
Right.
None of this happened, which I'm fine with. This is different text. We're talking about the film here, but it is interesting to me that it, because Adam's right. If the film was going that direction, it should have gone the same route as the book, and just like really lent into it. But
Yeah.
Oh, is that what the book?
This is
what's
what's
the book like?
Like constantly like
leaving
flick
little
the
hints.
switch back and forth.
Right.
Whereas for me, this
Yeah.
film just flicks the switch once.
It goes,
and then
maybe
and
he
then-
was lying.
yeah, it doesn't play
Maybe
with the
he's
light at
delusional.
all. It just turns the lights off.
Like, give me a dimmer switch movie.
Yeah.
Like, give me that
Let me play with a dimmer switch and turn the living room into a disco.
into a disco, right? Because
I'll
I
get
think
fucking wild.
I think like that, yeah, give me some of that tension. Like, give me some of that pickup of like, well, is this actually happening? And you can do that in really interesting ways. But like, I mean, obviously, it's harder to do in cinema, but you can do it really well. Like, obviously, Chris Nolan's Memento is a great example where like that film is like fucking brilliant, unreliable narration where because you and the protagonist don't have access to all of the information, other characters can be unreliable narrators within the protagonist's narrative. Problem with this film, I guess, in my opinion, or at least the execution of it, is that Bateman is our point of view. And if he's going to be the point of view, we need to be seeing his opinion versus the objective truth throughout the whole story, and like little niggling inconsistencies, like little things, like
Sorry.
God,
I
Adam, you have one job.
I literally muted it. Look, I literally muted it. Hold
No,
on.
we
Don't
can't
hear
see
it.
it. It's fine.
Don't
I'll
wanna
put
hear
it on the. You know what?
It actually is. Maybe I should.
Turn that
But
bastard off.
all we needed was like little things where the narration clashed slightly. So maybe Bateman said, "Oh yeah, this character said this," and then you hear the dialogue from the character, and it's slightly different. Like, you can do really little subtle things so that when you reread the text and you rewatch that film, you get that impression throughout. But I think it just doesn't quite stick that because it's a film in 2000. Like the sophistication there. Like, we hadn't had Inception yet. Like, we hadn't had Chris Nolan doing his spectacle shit. I think if it came out now, it would be very cerebral and complex. But I kind of like that it's not. Like, I like that in the film, at least, versus the book. The book is all about like movies and books, right? Instead of music. I like that the film went, no, it's music.
Yeah.
That for me was so much more interesting because there's like this stage presence to Christian Bale when he's giving those monologues about
my
like
God.
it's even if
Yeah.
like regardless of whether it happened or not, it's fucking terrifying. Like, when he starts monologuing about music, you're like, oh, something's about to
goddamn.
happen.
Yeah.
It's such a clever device. I'm
love
honestly in love
the
with
first
that.
time it happens with the Huey Lewis in the news, that's like that scene is iconic. Like, it's just
Yeah.
The whole film's iconic.
You watch it the first time, you're like, what the fuck? It's like it's just so
It's
you're
so
like, what
much.
is going on?
Yeah, and I guess like to me, the only point that I have left that I wanted to touch on is that let's just like in the idea of like him maybe making this up, regardless of whether it happened or not, is kind of irrelevant to this point. Actually, like the actual events that are happening are so absurd and so non-credible that they can't happen in our world, right? So if it is Ben's reading where it's like, they do happen in whatever that permutation of reality is,
Right.
or if it's kind of my reading where it's like maybe it's all fantasy, regardless, the absurdity of it makes it way easier to accept the normal stuff. Like the fact that he's so jealous of someone's business card and thinks everyone wants to fuck him is way more easy to accept when he's also murdering people.
Yeah, and he shoots a car out with a pistol,
And it
the car
explodes.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, so it makes sense. So like I think by subjecting us to the totally absurd fantasy / other reality, the extremely detailed, mundane, credible, everyday normalities of being in capitalism, we're just like primed to accept it. And his life is horrifically mundane. Like, shit's fucked up when he's like, this dude's got thicker business cards than me.
Right.
Like, that's not
He's
living.
got that extra thick business card.
He's got the embossed, like, it's fucked up. Like, but that wouldn't work unless you had that contrast. You could imagine this film, right, told from an objective perspective from my reading, where it's like just some business dude who like jacks off to weird fantasy porn or whatever.
Right.
Boring as fuck film. Your version, objectively, some dude going around killing people, being pretty miserable and like not really enjoying anything. Like, either way, unless you're in Bateman's perspective, it's just not an interesting story to be a part of because it doesn't give you that contrast of the absurdity with the kind of the mundane. And I guess when we're talking about trying to tell a story and like especially satire, like it's fucking hard to do that if you don't have a real strong focus.
Probably like the funniest scene in this film is when he's in the club and he's talking to the girl, the model, and she's like, he's like, ask me a question. And she's just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, whatever. She's like, oh, what do you do? And he's just
Murders
like,
and executions.
I'm in murders and executions. She's just like, oh, I've got some friends who are in mergers and acquisitions. It's, just like, it's so dumb because on one hand, it's similar to the very first scene where he's talking to the bartender and she turns around and he yells obscenities at her. It's just when you watch it, when you start watching
he's
the
like,
film,
I want to kill you
really
and,
and like dance in your
Yeah,
blood.
it's,
Yeah,
it's,
you're
it's
like,
something like you're an ugly bitch. I want to kill you and drink your blood. It was something.
thanks
Yeah.
thanks for quoting it directly.
Adam's
But it's
got
like
Adam's got that tattooed on his arm now.
it's like on one hand, it's just like, oh, maybe you shouldn't hear him because like the music's really loud. But it's like, no, she probably heard him, but it's just
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. In the same way that
people deal with.
yeah, she probably heard him say murders and executions, and she was just like, oh, you mean like mergers and acquisitions? Yeah, because that's what we do in this capitalist society, right? It's just like it's so. And you know, when he's like murmuring to Evelyn, where he's just like, I have like an insatiable desire to kill on a mass scale, and he's like, we have to talk, and she's just like, what? You're like that, you know, most people would at least have an ear in for that kind of weird shit. Like there's an idea in society where it's just like when someone does something really violent or says something really gross, your body just reacts to it.
Well,
you get that feeling where it's just like
your ears work. Your ears are like your brain is going to pick up on certain words. So it's like the same way a dog works. Like a dog doesn't understand what the word sit means, but he attributes the sound to a certain feeling or a certain sensation. And it's like we would attribute, you know, rape, murder, execution. We would attribute those sounds with
to like, oh, that's a thing I should probably like start listening to.
We talked about that in our Pitch Black reading because that was something that Toy was a big fan of, was this idea that like violence and like rape and murder and those kind of things and like sexual abuse, that's like a tear in the fabric of order, right? And that's what I think this film is getting at, is like, what if there was a version of reality
where those tears didn't exist,
where it wasn't a tear, it was just a part of it,
but it's still 1990s New York Wall Street.
And like, I think if you made that film now, right, and it was just based on reality, yeah, that's the world we live in now. Like, I that's the crazy thing to me, is it's like, obviously we have these systems in place, but they don't work. And I don't know if I don't think this film is as critical as some people give it credit for. Like, they want it to be this kind of deconstructionist sort of like capitalist thing. But I just think it's as simple as saying like, what if there was a version of reality where the tears in society that create the chaos of like murder and rape and all these things, what if they weren't tears? What if they were part of the fabric of capitalism? And what if you took capitalism to its nth degree, which is like, well, his business cards are thicker, his haircut's better. Like, you can't distinguish business people from each other because they have the same haircut and the same suit.
Yeah, and for me, Patrick Bateman specifically is that embodiment of that fabric, where
he's
like,
the apotheosis of capitalism.
like no one else acts like this, but he does. But because he's the center, no one else perceives it as being a problem. Like he's the coming in of this sort of machine into this existing world.
Do you guys have any recommendations for this week?
No.
Ben's been playing Crash Team Racing.
I've been playing Crash Team Racing. I actually picked up Watch Dogs 2 as well. I've been playing that.
It's better than the first one.
I haven't played the first one.
The stories, just play the story missions. Don't fuck around with side quests.
That's what I've been doing. Okay. And I've been enjoying
really good.
It. So far, like, as a techno boy, a lot of it's kind of cool and kind of interesting. Some of it's very on the nose, like the Martin Shkreli mission, where it's like literally just Martin Shkreli, where he like bought the Wu-Tang album for like a couple $1 million. So it's like, that's just Martin Shkreli.
Fucking FBI.
And then like
the fucking album.
Yeah, there's a lot of Yeah, the FBI need to release that album.
Wait, hang on. So are you just on a Ubi bandwagon? Because you were doing Far Cry 5,
exactly
and now did you get Far Cry New Dawn yet?
No, I haven't done that yet.
Fuck.
I'm gonna wait for it. I honestly might buy the Uplay Plus subscription.
Ben's become a corporate shill, ladies and gentlemen. He's just playing Uplay games now.
Ubisoft games, yeah.
Hey, wait, did I tell you that my own?
This episode of AFA brought to you by our sponsor, Ubisoft. Use code BCM at checkout for 15% off your first month.
They're never gonna do that.
We get accused of that kind of stuff a lot, where they're like, you're just being paid off by big whatever. And I'm like,
God,
if we were,
fucking wish.
I'm like, dude, yes, please. I need money so badly.
And we would disclose it all the time.
Yeah, all the time. I need money so bad. I need to pay off my drug debts. Like, I need that money.
I just need to pay off my student debts. So
I've already paid mine off.
It's like we're not fucking Instagram vloggers. We can't just like
not yet.
advertise a product that we're being paid to advertise. and then
not
not
disclose
tell
it.
you that it's
Not
an ad.
disclose it. Yeah.
That's not
That-
how
also,
the law
that's a
works.
crime.
Guys, here's this cool website I just found.
Also, that's a
Called,
crime in Australia.
Called DCMBet.com.
I
DCM Lotto.
as an aside, which kind of feeds into my recommendation. My
Sorry,
I think you broke
DCM
Adam.
Lotto.
DCM Lotto.
It's just a slot machine that you click, and it's just every single time you get cunt. That's all it spells.
But it's a,
You good?
It's like
That's
a
a new
entry.
personal my
Uplay account got hacked from Malaysia.
Malaysia.
Yeah, so
That's not that far
so
away.
Ubisoft emailed me and they were like, "You good, dog? You in Malaysia?" And I was like, "I'm not in Malaysia."
Not in Malaysia.
And they were like, "Oh, you own a
Are
bunch
you
of
sure?
games now, though." And I was like,
Oh yeah, they bought like a bunch of games.
"Yeah,"
from
and
your
I was
account?
like, "Okay." And they were like, "Yeah, they would charge you this thing, not your PayPal." And
That's
I was
fucking
like,
weird.
"Okay."
Cool. I'll
And they
just
were like,
take my
"Well,"
account back.
and they were like, "Just reset your password." And I was like, "Do I
you
keep
want
the
the
games?"
games?
And they were
Like,
like,
did you get to
"Yeah,
keep
we
the
legally
games?"
have to." They
They're
were
on
bought on your account.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of random garbo now that I
That's
don't
so
want.
funny.
So that's
I
fun.
think a friend of mine had a similar thing. Someone hijacked his account and played a bunch of, I think, Fortnite. And then he got his account back and was just like, "Oh, I'm like really high rank and level in Fortnite."
I don't know what that means.
Yeah. My Epic account got hijacked a bunch.
Yeah.
Well, attempted hijacking when Fortnite was
Right.
becoming
Isn't
popular.
their security,
From
like,
Russia.
not great.
No, it's
No, it's
horrendous.
terrible.
This was
Right.
before they had
Yeah.
two-factor.
My only recommendation for this week is I've been reading Watsky's memoir, How to Ruin Everything. Fuck, it's good. It's like a sort of a series of like anachronistic kind of stories from his life. It's really funny and heartwarming, and I've cried twice, and I'm like halfway through it, so definitely recommend checking that out.
I might read that.
Adam, do you have any recommendos for this week?
Okay, one thing I played recently. Okay, I didn't play it. I watched recently was this fucking short film. I was telling you about it, Ben. It's called fucking Traveling While Black, and it's like a VR short film, and it was shot in stereoscopic 3D.
Yeah, you mentioned that while we were playing Windlands, and I completely forgot about it because we were playing Windlands.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's a VR game, yeah.
So we were, you're like sitting in this restaurant, and it's just like people sitting in like a booth beside you, talking to you. But it's very odd feeling, and it's like about to break through Uncanny Valley because they look like real people that you could reach out and like you could stroke their face, and they'd be like, "Why the fuck are you stroking my face?"
Love
It's
it.
like, I don't
So
know
is it
you.
actually, does it actually use like, is there head tracking or is it just a 360 video?
It's a 360 video, so there's no
Okay.
there's no 60 OF, which
It's
is
just
really
rotation.
annoying. But like,
It's just rotation. Okay.
yeah, keep your head in the same place.
Yeah.
The whole time. Otherwise, it'll start to feel really weird.
Yeah. No. yeah. I know. I've nearly made myself throw up from
Yeah,
360
it's-
videos. Yeah.
It's like I remember I was like,
yeah.
I think they had like a piece of paper on the table, and I went to lean in, and nothing moved. I was like,
And you
"Ugh."
went, "Boo."
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. No, that shit sucks. Yeah.
I also wanted to give a big shout out to Level Story, which is a new online magazine. Levelstory.net.
Here we go
We're going to be doing
again.
some collabs.
Brought to you by levelstory.net. Go to levelstory.net and
Adam!
use code DCM at checkout
Adam,
for 15%
we're
off your purchase.
We're actually doing.
Adam! Fuck, I'm trying. Like, okay,
We're
so
legitimately trying to plug
because
something.
it's really good.
Yeah.
Their latest episode, their latest magazine, issue 2, is about Firewatch. It's really good.
It is really.
Oh, I
Um,
fucking
I-
love Firewatch.
I highly recommend checking it out. It is honestly like games writing, the kind of stuff that we love. We're gonna be doing a collab with them soon. Big shout out to Danielle. She's crushing it over there. But honestly, like check out issue 2. It's issue 1 is about Banjo-Kazooie. Issue 2 is Firewatch.
Just a great selection of video games.
Honestly, the quality of this magazine for an online magazine is fucking
It's really
incredible.
good,
It's
yeah.
so good. And they have a podcast which I'm gonna be on soon. We're gonna be collabing, so check it out. I'm like so impressed by them. So check them out. Really recommend. Otherwise, where can people find us?
Facebook,
At DCMWorks Social.
YouTube,
YouTube.com/DCMWorks.
Twitter,
At DCM_works.
Patreon.
Patreon.com/DCMworks. There's no post show this week or last week because
Good.
we've been very
Fucking
tired. We're going to bring back live streaming when we have our setup finalized. We've just kind of moved everything around. But I think that's all of it. Adam, do you want to plug anything?
I thought oddly everywhere. I guess you can follow me on all the socials if you want. I would say join the Discord, but we're trying to do a big surprise a DCM Discord at some point, maybe in the
At some
future.
point.
Surprise!
It's not really a surprise.
We're doing a DCM West Discord.
This
Hopefully-
isn't an announcement.
Surprise.
It is not
No,
happening anytime
surprise.
soon.
Actually, this is. I need to put pressure on it. Are we doing it this week?
Okay.
Yeah,
Doing
this
it this
week,
week?
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck
And it
yeah,
needs to
okay.
happen.
Surprise!
No, it needs to happen because otherwise I'm never going to do it this
Yeah.
week. We'll put a link in the description. I'm going to make it happen before this
I'm always on
episode goes
Discord,
up.
so make me
Yeah.
a mod.
Adam's going to run it. I don't know what I'm doing.
Make me a mod.
And it's going to be a place where you can
Yeah,
jump
of
in. You
course
can
I'll
chat
make
about
you a
the
mod.
stuff. You can chat about like the maybe talk about like the episodes coming up, like old stuff. I don't know. It'll be just a place where you can chat about stuff
Just
and
shoot the shit.
just no cunts allowed. Like,
Yeah, if you're a Nazi, we'll kick you.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
props. So look forward to
Yeah,
that.
it's like,
Adam and I'll set that up.
this is gonna be the kind of server that just doesn't have an NSFW room because we don't want that shit. No one wants
No.
that shit.
No.
If you want
It's-
that, you can go to Adam's
Yeah,
Discord.
go to Adam's Discord.
No,
it's
I
just going to
deleted
be
my fucking I deleted my NSFW
you deleted it?
room
Okay.
and I
Very
tell
defensive.
people off when they chat shit. We're getting
This is gonna
legitimate
be really
discussion
hard
in
to
there
edit.
now.
Good.
It takes
gonna
a
be-
while to nurture that.
really difficult episode to edit.
Oh, you're gonna love it. Man.
I hate future me. I'm like, this is gonna
Yeah,
spend a good time
but
on this one. We have to end this podcast. If you want to follow us individually, I'm at DCM I Hate Pie.
I'm at Literal Citrus.
We're going to bed. We'll see you guys next week.
Okay, fine, all right, yeah. Fuck that then. All right, bye.
You already
Don't
plugged
even
your
let
shit,
me get a
dog.
word in.
You already plugged it. He's left his room.
He's gone.
He's left his room.
Alright, that was probably enough time. You can just cut it there. Is that gonna
Yeah,
work?
it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Real good,
Okay.
Pat? All right, that's it.